Steam Next Fest is back, and with it a pool full of new demos to dive into. With so many games to choose from, you might be wondering which ones are worth your attention now and maybe your money when they hit a full release. So I put together another round of rapid-fire recommendations, spotlighting some standout picks from seasoned indie pros and exciting newcomers alike. But this time, with a twist. Every demo in this roundup has been tested either on a Mac or a Steam Deck, two platforms that often get left out of the spotlight. So whether you're lounging with your deck on the go or looking to put your Mac through its paces, I've got some solid options to help fill out your summer playlist. I'll know which platforms each game supports and let you know where I played them to, so you can find the perfect match for your setup and the season. I'm kicking things off with my favourite demo of the show, though chances are it's one you've already heard of. Devolver Digital dedicated their entire Summer Games Fest presentation to this strange new title from developer Kenny Sun and friends. At first I thought it was going to be an elaborate ARG cooked up for the stream, but fortunately not. It's a real game, and even better, it's really good. Ball X Pit is what happens when you fuse hold downs, rapid fire ball breaking, Ikari Warriors top down shooting, and the steady dopamine drip of a Vampire Survivor style roguelike. The core gameplay is certainly addictive. Enemies trickle down the screen in slow waves, and your attacks take the form of ricocheting balls into them, breakout style. Like that game, the meta is to trap those balls in pockets and corners, letting them ping around endlessly and chip away at enemy health. Defeated enemies drop experience gems, which can be spent on new types of projectiles, such as spike balls that cause bleeding, ghost balls that pass through targets, or others that split into additional mini balls. And then there are the fusion cores, reality warping power-ups that combine your balls and modifiers into wild new weapons. One of my favourites fused vertical and horizontal laser balls into a holy laser grid that absolutely melts enemy waves. It's these moments great roguelikes are made of, encouraging experimentation with different builds and, more importantly, had me keen to unlock all the different combinations. Between bouts of bouncing balls, you're tasked with rebuilding a ruined city. Every run feeds into your progression, with upgrades, character unlocks, and building resources that carry over between rounds. You do all this naturally by firing your little guys into structures like pinballs to mine, harvest, and develop new buffs. It's a clever loop that adds a layer of long-term planning to the arcade action, like XCOM by way of Breakout, with a little Dark Souls for seasoning. The whole thing is wrapped in a haunting, dark fantasy aesthetic. The music is tense and atmospheric, with enemy chants rising dynamically as more of them flood the screen, building pressure in time with the action. That contrast between the goofy mechanics and the serious, almost mythic tone gives Ball X Pit a unique and appreciated edge. Of all the demos I played during Next Fest, this is the one I kept coming back to. I chased down every character, unlocked every building, and ticked off as mmany tasks as I could. The demo has a clear stopping point, but it gave me more than enough to know that this is going to be something special. Like Balatro or Star Vaders, this is a demo that could easily stand on its own, and I hope it stays up long after Next Fest wraps up. Platform-wise, Ball X Pit is appreciably flexible, available on Mac, Windows, and Steam Deck. I played it on my M4 Mini with keyboard and mouse, and that felt like the best way to go. Reticle-based aiming with independent movement isn't a natural fit for a controller just yet, so if you're going portable, keep that in mind. That said, the pick-up-and-play nature of Ball X Pit makes it a perfect match for the Steam Deck. Much like Balatro, it's a game that thrives in short bursts, but with that addictive gameplay loop that keeps you going beyond just another round. So yeah, it might be a bit cheeky to give top billing to a Devolver-published title, but hey, that's what the power of good financial backing buys you. Ball X Pit blends its inspiration so well that it manages to feel like something entirely its own, and if this is just a morsel of what they're cooking up for the full release, then, well, I'll be first in line. While I'm still on the topic of higher profile picks, I want to highlight another roguelike with a clever twist. Wordplay, the latest from Game Maker's Toolkit, blends the structure of a Balatro with the strategy of Scrabble, creating a surprisingly thoughtful experience that lives up to its name. Full disclosure though, the developer did recently beat me at mini golf, so do take this recommendation with a grain of salt. Bias aside, I really enjoy games like this, tapping into roguelike upgrade building but filtered through my favourite daily ritual games like Wordle, Raddle or Connections. You only have so many words per round to meet a quota, and too many 4-letter or low-ranking picks will eat into precious turns. As you progress, you unlock interesting modifiers, glass tiles that can be used only once, go tiles that boost your score, and tiles that inject new letter combinations like ing or q into the mix. It adds a nice letter of unpredictability and forward planning to what's usually a static format. What makes wordplay particularly interesting is that it doesn't rely on fast reflexes or pattern recognition, it rewards vocabulary. Your knowledge base going in has a major impact on your success. The more words you know, the more options you have. I'll admit, despite how many scripts I've written, I wouldn't call myself a wordsmith, and this game had me second-guessing spellings and consulting dictionaries like games of Scrabble do. Even if you're not especially confident in your vocab though, wordplay is worth a look. It's a smart and very slick take on the roguelike formula, and it's one that might just expand your lexicon along the way. It's available across platforms, but it's gonna shine the brightest on mobile and tablet. The interface is built for touch, with responsive tap and swipe controls and a clean layout that reads perfectly on smaller screens. Like with Mind Over Magnet, the developer's previous title, the polish is evident, well-executed motion graphics, sharp UI, and a soundscape that gives each tile and interaction a satisfying sense of texture. If you're still chasing that roguelike blender fix and will only take a recommendation seriously if it comes from deep in the indie trenches, then let me point you towards Replicat. It's one of the more unexpected interpretations of the Balatro-style formula I've seen, applying that same chaotic power-up driven energy to possibly the simplest game format out there, the memory match card game. Each round starts with a grid of face-down cards, and you have a limited number of flips to find matching cats, each with different point values and multipliers. It's exactly what it sounds like, pairs with a Balatro twist. As you play, you unlock modifiers, mutations, and occasional boss encounters that alter the rules or throw in additional constraints. The power-ups aren't quite as intuitive or immediately satisfying as in Borlek's Pit or Wordplay, but they do lead to fun and sometimes surprising combinations. A quick note on presentation though, the game draws a lot of its art from famous internet cat memes. If that kind of humour isn't your thing, it may wear thin quickly. Personally, I found it more charming than annoying, though admittedly it leans pretty heavily into that tone. Still, for the hour or so I spent with it, the game kept me engaged. It's a clever little remix of a well-known mechanic, with just enough randomness and progression to keep things moving. More than anything, I appreciate Replicat for what it represents. It doesn't have the polish of a developer-packed project or the visibility of a million-subscriber YouTuber, but it stands out thanks to a simple but well-executed idea. Sometimes that's enough to get my humble attention. Although Steam Next Fest is open to players around the world, the titles that tend to dominate the conversation often come from the indie powerhouses in the English-speaking world, so it's always a welcome change when I get the chance to highlight something from a less prominent development scene. MotionRec from Japanese indie publisher Playism and developer Handsome is one of those gems, quietly inventive, beautifully executed, and deeply rooted in what makes the indie space so exciting. The game feels like a spiritual successor to the era of XBLA puzzle platformers, although visually its minimalist aesthetic recalls the 1-bit display of the Playdate. Fittingly, MotionRec was first prototyped on the Pico 8 before growing into a more fleshed out release, and the result is an absolute joy to play. At the heart of MotionRec is a deceptively simple idea. You can record a few seconds of your robot character's movement, then replay that recording anywhere in the world. Say you record yourself jumping up a vertical series of platforms, you can now deploy that movement later to instantly climb to the same heights, but you might just record a dash across solid ground and use that to cross a wide gap elsewhere. What makes it even more interesting is that the world freezes while the recording plays, platforms stay in place and buttons remain pressed, turning each level into a spatial puzzle where you're not just solving challenges in real time, but figuring out how to pre-record the solution. It's a brilliant mechanic, and even more impressive is how intuitively it's introduced. There's no dialogue or written tutorial, just a couple of illustrated button prompts, and from there you're off. It's an elegant approach to onboarding and a great example of how thoughtful design can bridge language barriers, especially for a developer working outside English-speaking markets. Of all the demos I played, MotionRec might be the one that stuck with me the most. It captures the spirit of games like Braid or The Misadventures of PB Winterbottom, titles that use simple time-bending concepts to explore complex interactions, but wraps it in a visually striking style that feels uniquely current. It's sleek, inventive, and confident in its minimalism. I played it on Steam Deck, and it's a great fit for the platform. Like Celeste, it's the kind of game you can dip in and out of throughout the day, returning with fresh ideas for puzzles that stumped you earlier. And the stark black and white visuals look fantastic on an OLED screen. The deep blacks are truly black, and the white outlines practically glow. Honestly, I'd love to see MotionRec bundled in a hypothetical 1-bit classics collection alongside games like Minute, as a celebration at how much creativity can come from working within visual constraints. MotionRec then is a standout and a clear highlight of this next fest. So for this next review, I'll be doing it in the voice of the YouTube channel Kurzgesagt in a nutshell.
What if you were a flock of spacefaring birds stranded in an unfamiliar galaxy with no clear way home and no resources to speak of? Well, at least you'd have access to an impressive array of mining equipment and a whole lot of mysterious meteorites to put it to use on. That's the premise behind Starbirds, the debut game from Kurzgesagt, the YouTube channel best known for its polished motion graphic explainers on science and the cosmos. But what makes Starbirds even more intriguing is its collaboration with Takana Interactive, the German studio behind Dorfromantik, a serene, tile-based town builder I covered a few years back in a video on city puzzle games. In many ways, the partnership makes a lot of sense. It marries Kurzgesagt's clean visual language with Takana's knack for intuitive, board game-like mechanics, but what's especially interesting is how both teams stretch beyond their usual visual comfort zones, venturing into full 3D space. The result feels somewhere between a child-friendly iPad toy and a planetary strategy sim. It's a title that's accessible and tactile, perfectly aimed at midwits like me. Unfortunately, Starbirds was also one of the few demos in this next fest that left me a little disappointed. Not because the concept isn't strong, but because the execution in this early version didn't quite hold up. The demo, available only on Windows and Steam Deck, ran noticeably poorly on the latter. While the 2D interface was fluid and responsive, performance dipped dramatically whenever transitioning to the 3D planetary view. And since so much of the gameplay revolves around rotating these planetoids and interacting with their facilities, the lag made the experience feel clumsy and at odds with its otherwise toy-like charm. That said, unlike a few other anticipated demos that fell short, this feels like the sort of thing that could be meaningfully improved by the time of a full release. In fact, I'd argue Starbirds might be better suited to tablets entirely, both from a control perspective and a cultural one, given how many kids already use tablets, and how the game seems to contain a light educational thread in keeping with Kurzgesagt's ethos. It feels like a natural fit for big touchscreens. So while this wasn't quite the experience I was hoping for yet, the concept still holds promise. With a little more technical polish and maybe a platform rethink, I'd love to see where the Starbirds flock off to next.
A few of the games I discovered during this next fest didn't come from big front-page features or word-of-mouth buzz, but something a little more old-fashioned: direct email. Yes, I've apparently reached that mythical stage of games writing where demos now wash up in my inbox. And while not every one of them was a hidden gem, casting a wide net led me to one particularly cool catch. Operation Octo from the developers at Club Copter might not be the most polished or flashy demo in this roundup, but mechanically it just might be the most interesting. If you've ever been a fan of Plants vs Zombies, PopCap's streamlined take on tower defense with its neat garden lane structure and sunflower economy, then Octo might be right up your alley. But it adds a clever twist to the formula. Instead of playing as a floating cursor, you control an octopus who scurries around the map to handle everything directly. This means placing sea creatures like seahorses and electric eels, collecting currency from burping clams, and luring pirate skeletons into your defenses, all while staying out of harm's way. The result is a kind of strategic juggling act, where you're constantly swimming between generators, fortifying your defenses, and guiding enemy movement. It's more hands-on, more dynamic, and surprisingly refreshing. The reskinning of classic garden warfare into a nautical theme works better than you might expect. Trading plants for marine life and zombies for scrappy pirate skeletons adds just the right amount of charm. The maps are top-down and flat, but smartly shaped by ocean trenches that create natural funnels and choke points, more open-ended than Plants vs. Zombies strict lanes, and requiring a bit more spatial awareness as a result. In fact, Operation Octo ends up feeling like a light tactical MOBA in disguise. I tested it on Steam Deck, and while the controller support is solid, the game really feels built for pointer-based control. Quick clicking and unit placement are at the heart of the experience, and a mouse or even a touchscreen would be ideal. Honestly, you would feel right at home on tablets, just like the PopCap classic it evokes. So if you're after something that swims in the same waters as Plant vs. Zombies, but with a more active and strategic twist, Operation Octo is definitely worth a dive. It's smart and snappy, just the kind of game to sink your teeth into this summer. Before I get to my final recommendation, I wanted to give a quick shout out to a shorter but no less charming demo, Bits and Bops. In a time where WarioWare likes are starting to crop up more regularly on Steam, this game goes in a slightly different direction by positioning itself as a kind of non-Nintendo take on Rhythm Heaven, and impressively it pulls it off, maybe a little too well. Right down to the feel of the timing prompts, the sound effects during tutorials, and even the tone of the results screens. It's a bold homage then, and while Bits and Bops doesn't dethrone Rhythm Heaven, it's a genuinely solid alternative, especially for anyone without access to Nintendo hardware or who don't want to navigate the murky waters of emulation. The demo is on the lighter side, featuring just 4 rhythm games to test your timing skills. That said, the mechanics are sharp and responsive, and the presentation is polished throughout. I played the Mac version, where the digital button inputs felt clean and reliable, but I imagine this will really shine on something portable like the Steam Deck. Much like the original Rhythm Heaven, there's a clear appeal in being able to carry around a little portable music box, mastering the patterns and pushing yourself through remix challenges. Despite how closely it mirrors Nintendo's formula, Bits and Bops has plenty of charm of its own. The visuals are bright and expressive, and the music is genuinely catchy. And if anything, the lack of a single house art style means the team was free to explore a broader visual range, something that helps the game stand out rather than feel like a direct copy. Assuming it doesn't catch the wrong end of attention from the Big N's legal team then, Bits and Bops is absolutely one to keep an eye on. A confident, stylish rhythm game, and a welcome addition to a genre that's still far too rare outside of Nintendo's walls. One of the standout titles from Double Fine's recent Day of the Devs showcase was a new game from AP Thompson and Jenny Xiaoxia. If AP's name rings a bell, it's probably because of Multi-Bowl, the experimental multiplayer mashup he co-developed with Bennett Foddy, and a game I still count among my all-time favourites. Foddy, incidentally, has his own new game in this year's Next Fest. That same blend of mechanical madness and experimental charm is definitely on the plate here, now paired with Jenny's personal and surprisingly funny storytelling. Consume Me plays like a cross between Florence, Venba, and WarioWare, a fast-paced collection of microgames built around the experience of growing up while navigating food, body image, and self-discipline. You're dropped into slices of daily life. Walking the dog, folding laundry, squeezing an exercise, or trying to build a balanced meal all become snappy, reactive games. It's a diary-turned interactive routine, with each action feeding into free energy meters that track your day. Overdo it and you'll burn out. Neglect yourself and you'll be running on empty. A delicate balancing act, just like life. The personal themes might sound familiar to fans of this kind of game, but the flavour here is completely different. The game opens by acknowledging its sensitive subject matter, making clear that while the art is playful and the tone is silly, the topic of weight loss and personal well-being is handled with care. But it never leans into melodrama or self-seriousness. Instead, it finds humour and insight in the chaos of daily routine, helped by the developer's wonderfully oddball sense of humour, which shines through in the visuals, audio, and especially how the game feels to play. What's particularly striking is how instinctive the design is. Jenny has mentioned she doesn't consider herself much of a gamer, but the mechanics here are buttery smooth, gamey in all the right ways. It's a reminder you don't need sweeping worlds or power fantasies to make a strong game. Sometimes the everyday can be more than enough, especially when presented with this much charm and creativity. No wonder it won the Excellence in Narrative and Visual Art Awards at the 2025 Independent Games Festival then. The demo itself is just a small serving of the full game, but it's left me with a lasting impression. I'm eager to see where the story goes and how the systems evolve alongside it. It's set to release across all platforms, and while it feels particularly well suited for mobile or tablet thanks to its tap and swipe input, it should work just as well on anything with pointer support. If you're hungry for something different, heartfelt, clever, and a little weird, then Consume Me is definitely worth a bite. Not just because of the message it serves up, but because it delivers it in a way that's funnier, sharper, and more satisfying than most games dare to chew on. And those were my standout picks from June 2025 Steam Next Fest, but honestly they're just the tip of the iceberg. There are plenty of great demos I didn't quite have the time to cover, like Holston, a clever 2D horror game that blends the top-down dread of Crow Country with over-the-shoulder RE4 style shooting. Or Mina the Hollower, the latest from Yacht Club. Think Game Boy Color era Zelda mixed with a splash of Bloodborne, brought to life with that developer's flair for period-appropriate pixel art. It didn't quite click for me though, but it might be exactly your thing. I also want to give a quick shout out to the developers who reached out to me over on B-Sky. One highlight was Hoard's Limited Labyrinth Company, a charming mix of dungeon building and block rotation puzzles where you're guiding a minotaur to the exit in as few moves as possible. Genuinely smart and cute stuff. One of the goals of this video was to focus on how these demos performed on Mac and Steam Deck, and I came away pleasantly surprised. Not only are there more ways to play games than ever, but a growing number of developers are clearly thinking about accessibility across different platforms and control schemes. Sure, there were a few letdowns, like the Yooka-Laylee reboot refusing to launch on deck, or some demos that struggled with performance, but the majority ran great. Next Fest isn't really about the blockbuster AAA releases, but small, independently made concepts that are quick to pick up, cheap to buy, and bursting with ideas, and in that sense both the Steam Deck and Mac are perfect homes for these bite-sized experiments. But of course I've barely scratched the surface, so now it's your turn. What caught your eye this Next Fest? Which demos impressed you the most? What are you excited to see reach full release, and how will you be playing them? Drop your picks in the comments. Until next time, I'm James, and I'll see you all in the next upload.